So as was kindly introduced, my name is Niklas Karvonen. I am the Community Director at Nordic Innovation House, Tokyo. And in my presentation today, I will talk a little bit about what Nordic Innovation House is so that you understand where I am coming from. And we'll also touch upon why startups could potentially collaborate with governments. Also, what are some of the challenges that you have in startup ecosystem when different types of stakeholders have to work together, and what are some of the solutions that we can think to those challenges? And then we'll wrap it up with some really cool examples from Japan of global startup ecosystems. But let's get to it. Nordic Innovation House, as mentioned, it is a pan-Nordic project, which means that the countries of Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and Denmark, the 5 Nordic countries, are all equally represented, and we are funded by an organization called Nordic Innovation. And besides Tokyo, we're also present in Silicon Valley, New York, Singapore, and Hong Kong. All with the same mission, to scale the best of the Nordics. So we work together with Nordic startup, scale-up, and growth companies who are interested in exploring these hotspots. But we do it together with the embassies and together with the trade promotion offices of these embassies, and also with the kind support of the Nordic ambassadors behind this project. And why could that possibly be of interest to startups? And this is also the team, just to show you my board members, indeed representing all these 5 countries here in Tokyo. Let me show you this picture. It's a very interesting picture. It's a little bit blurry, sorry for that. This was taken from Slush, which is one of the largest European startup events, which takes place in Helsinki. We've also had a couple of versions here in Japan as well. And what makes this picture interesting is that we have Ilkka Paananen, who is the CEO of Supercell. We have also Prince Daniel. We have the president, Sauli Niinistö, the president of Finland. Of course, Prince William, as I'm sure you will recognize. And then we also have CEO of Slush, Marianne Vilkula, in this picture. This is from the first day of the Slush conference in Finland. Why are all these people here? Why are they all coming together in this conference? These are some of the reasons why startups could be interested in collaborating with government agencies. And I was thinking of Japan a little bit when I was listing this, and that's why I put the stamp of approval as the first one. Many of you in the audience might know that as a foreign startup, as a foreign entity here in Japan, it can be quite difficult to get that legitimacy, to get that reputation. You can go and knock on Rakuten's doors, but you're not exactly maybe sure which door. They have a lot of doors. And even if you do get through the door, will they take you seriously? So collaborating with a government agency can really help you to get that stamp of approval for your business. I work together with this trustworthy organization. They believe in me. Hence, you can trust us. Also, these agencies have been here for a long time, which means that they have deep pockets of networks and networks and networks that you might be able to tap into, as well as delegations gathering, let's say, 15 startups from your country, come to Japan. It's a pretty well-made schedule, typically quite affordable to enter into, and you will get to meet the stakeholders in a very intense week. Also, national projects like smart cities, railway projects, data centers, any project with national interest typically is connected to certain government agencies who collaborate and communicate with each other. So if you can be in those discussions, or if the people in those discussions remember you, that can also open some doors for you, as well as PR and visibility. But this is not always very easy. And as we also, from Mariko's presentation as well, you need collaboration between governments, between businesses, business communities, all these different kinds of stakeholders, and they all represent different kind of organizations. So there are bound to be challenges when you collaborate. And in my today's presentation, we'll go through 5 of them, and I'll also give some solutions that I have found useful in my position when I tackle with the governments, with the private organizations, VC, CVC, startups, and so on and so forth. So bear with me. Let's go on a ride of challenges and solutions. I would like to start with KPIs. What is success to you? Every organization has KPIs. Those are the internal motivators that people have What ticks them? Is it a financial return, maybe for investors? Is it access to new networks? Is it a possibility to have a high-level visit? This can be very interesting to embassies, for example. So as a solution, I would recommend to spend time understanding the underlying motivators of the stakeholders that you are involved with, find synergies between them, and find a way to sell your idea, to sell your project based on the KPIs that you think are relevant to them. So in my job, I wish to see a lot of Nordic startups in Japan. For VCs, that might mean great opportunities to invest. For embassies, that can mean great high-level visits from ministers or such. So figure out a way to sell your project based on the KPIs that you've identified your stakeholders to have. Sense of time, this is what I tackle maybe the most with how soon is soon. 24 hours for a startup can be a perfectly fine time window to go from idea to execution. VCs, maybe you need a little bit more time with due diligence and such. Governmental institution, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, or a week. That's also possible. But typically plans are set in stone a little bit in advance. So you do have to be realistic about what's doable and also communicate and manage expectations and really spend the time to figure out why things take time or why do they not take time, and then how can you expedite that process by perhaps knowing the organization better, knowing who are the key stakeholders that you can reach out to, and understanding how communication flows in these organizations. Risk. What is risky for you? Every project has a risk. Every organization has a different type of risk profile. It can be a financial loss. It can be a reputation damage. For example, for governmental institutions, this can be very important. Who do you partner with? How can you qualify partners to make sure that there are no reputation damages down the line? Security concern, or for a startup, maybe it's a missed window of opportunity. So when you embark on a new project with stakeholders you're not necessarily very familiar with, do conduct a risk analysis. And this doesn't have to be a 20-page PowerPoint slide. You can just go and talk to these people. What are your concerns regarding this collaboration? What are you afraid of? What could be the worst thing for you that could happen from this project? And the same way with the KPIs, you're trying to sell your project depending on what they are looking for. Also the same way you're trying to sell the project by appealing to these risks and figuring out a way that you can minimize them. But first you have to understand what are the different types of risk profiles for these organizations that you're collaborating with. And we have 2 more to go. Levels of knowledge, are we all talking about the same thing to begin with? You cannot expect everyone to have in-depth knowledge of all the topics that you will be involved with, especially if we talk about, let's say, very deep technologies. Likely the stakeholders will not necessarily have a throughout understanding of what it is that you're actually talking about. And that's fine. But you do need to identify these knowledge gaps and be ready to provide more information when needed, when appropriate. You necessarily don't want to come across as a lecturer. Maybe it's just a casual chit chat before the meeting just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And you need to know what's the minimum amount of knowledge that everyone has to have in order for the project to go forward. Otherwise, it could go down pretty quickly. And the last challenge that I've identified working with different communication is really different stakeholders is really regarding communication. So do you ping or do you ring? University students, politicians, company executives, very different types of communication styles, very different types of channels that they use, and very different processes. Perhaps you can't just pick up the phone and call the ambassador. Maybe you can if you have that kind of relationship. That's great. But chances are that there is a bit of a process that you need to go through. And this is, again, something that you can figure out when you set up the project. Discuss the preferred communication method with the stakeholders, what's acceptable, what's expected, and also be ready to challenge existing methods. So we live in the world of startup where time is of the essence. If everything has to be done through email, then that's probably not going to go down very well. So be willing to also challenge and try new things. And I think the era that we're currently living is, in a sense, a window of opportunity to try new things and introduce new applications, whether it's Slack or others, into these organizations, now that everyone is kind of figuring out communication and how to talk to each other again. So these are all pretty tactical challenges. And maybe the two main things that I would really like to highlight is on how you can overcome these challenges are building empathy and focusing on the founder. And I chose the word build quite deliberately here. Often empathy is also used as to have empathy or be empathetic. However, I think it is a very active process and you have to proactively build it. Which means that you have to talk to these different stakeholders, understand their wishes, worries, anxieties, values, and speak with their language. So that down the line, when you run into these issues of communication or knowledge or whatnot, they trust that you understand them. They trust that, okay, he knows where I'm coming from, and we are on the same team. So it is a really proactive phenomenon, building empathy and being empathic towards the stakeholders. And also focusing on the founders. This is, when everything is about to go south, I think this is a pretty good statement that you can say at the end of the day when you want to make sure that your message gets through. At the end of the day, everyone in the startup ecosystem, whether it's CVCs, VCs, governments, startups, large corporations, academia, whatnot, if they say that they are a relevant part of the ecosystem, they should have the founders in the focus. So whatever initiative you're trying to push, you could always and you should always bring it down to the founder level. Not necessarily think about the brand of your own organization, but go with the founder first. How can this entrepreneur benefit from this type of opportunity that we can give, whether it's to arrange a delegation or certain matchmaking or pitching or whatnot. Always build it down to the founder level while being empathic to the stakeholders that you're involved with. So those are the 5 challenges that I wanted to bring today, and hopefully these solutions are also of interest to anyone who's involved with building bridges across different organizations. Before I conclude, I just wanted to highlight some really cool active global startup ecosystems around Japan. Of course, IGNITE Sencai being part of it, and hopefully we'll have a physical event also at some point, but it's really cool that we can connect online as well. There are a lot of ecosystems around Japan, so it's not just Tokyo. Of course, we have some really cool things within the Cambridge Innovation Center, venture cafes, venturing out of Tokyo as well. A lot of interesting things going on in Osaka. We will hear a presentation very soon, as well as other parts, all the way from Okinawa to Sapporo as well. And then also digital places for people to meet and discuss social innovation in Japan. We will not go too much into the last slide, but just saying that if you ever are looking for a really cool ecosystem in the Nordics, the Maria 01, it's great. Just look it up. They just got approval from the city of Helsinki to enlarge themselves to 70,000 square meters, which actually makes it the largest European startup ecosystem. And they do things really well. But please Google that or ask from me if you have any further questions about that. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation, and thanks again for letting me play part of the IGNITE Sencai 2020.